My name's Leo and I'm a boat builder and a sailor, and I'm on a mission to rebuild and restore this 111-year-old classic sailing yacht, Tally-Ho. In this video we're going to be finalising the interior layout, which we started mocking up last week, and making a few changes based on suggestions and development of our ideas. We're going to be mocking up the cockpit to see what it's going to be like to steer the boat, and we're going to be finally moving on to making the first of the interior bulkheads. That'll involve some pattern making and then cutting out and finally laminating up the Douglas fir tongue and groove boards which Rowan and Patrick milled up. So since I've been rebuilding Tally-Ho, I've actually had a couple of people come and scan the boat with a very fancy high-tech 3D laser scanning thing. Now of course there's all sorts of really interesting uses for this data. One thing I'm looking forward to doing is comparing the shape of the boat before and after the rebuild and seeing which of those is closest to the lines plan and how much the boat has changed. But right now we've actually started using that 3D model to make templates for our bulkheads. Essentially, you can create a cross-section of the boat at any position you want and then transfer that into a two-dimensional shape which you can get printed out and then cut out and fit inside the boat. Originally, we were hoping that we might be able to use those templates to actually cut out our final bulkheads without actually making any traditional patterns at all, but we didn't quite get to that point. The data itself is very accurate, but through the process of exporting it and printing it and so on, we end up with a thicker line than we would like. And so what we're going to do is use those printouts from the 3D scan just to get our templates in roughly the right shape, and then we're still going to spile them traditionally to find the actual shape of the hull using blocks and pencil marks.
To make the patterns for the bulkheads, first we printed out the lines from the 3D model, and then we took that print and we put it on a piece of door skin and transferred the lines through, and then we offset from that line an inch. Having the paper patterns is really nice because it helps us get very close to a fitting pattern almost immediately. That makes filing much easier.
So right now I'm standing in the cockpit, which we've mocked up to show what it's going to be like. Now the cockpit is of course one of the most important parts of the boat. It's where you control the boat from, where you steer it from, and where a lot of the sheets will lead back to. So you pretty much control the boat from here, apart from hoisting sails and stuff, which you'll do further forward. Now the design of the cockpit is of course pretty much coming off of the original drawings, but there is a little bit of room for interpretation there because the drawings do not show exactly certain measurements such as the height of the seats and so on. So we don't know exactly how it was originally built, but there's a little bit of room for moving things around. Just very small adjustments, really just trying to get the sort of sitting geometry correct and make sure it's going to be a really nice, comfortable and safe place to helm the boat and control the boat from. So this stick of wood represents the tiller, and this is going to be the place where you'll normally be steering the boat from, sitting on these benches here. And We've sort of carefully calculated the width of the bench, the depth of the footwell, the height of the combing, and so on, to try and make it fairly authentic, but also be as comfortable and practical as possible. So it's pretty comfortable to sail the boat from here, but you also have to take into account when the boat is heeling over pretty hard, you have to probably brace off the other side of the cockpit, which is quite easy with this size. You also may sit up here to steer the boat, and that's pretty comfortable as well. When you're actually sailing, of course, you won't need to move the tiller too far over, except for when you tack, say, where you push it away from you. When you're motoring in harbour and need a lot of manoeuvrability, it's likely that the helmsman will stand here and be able to push the tiller over really far on either side, but also we'll have engine controls probably right down here. I've been really trying to get this dialed in so I can record the positions of all this stuff, because I'm going to need to pull it out to make the templates for the lazarette bulkhead, which is the first bulkhead we're going to make, and the guys are going to get started on that really soon.
Halfway down the Laz hatch where I'll be sleeping when we're cruising across the Atlantic. Life's good back here. You know, they throw the scraps at me every other day. Well, so we've got 2 halves of a full pattern for the lazarette bulkhead that we're making out of 1/8-inch thick plywood. We'll pretty soon be getting some spiling blocks together just to dial in the shape to just make it that perfect, super perfect shape that it fits, so that it fits. Goodbye.
So we have made a few changes here in the saloon and the galley. The biggest change, although it's not that dramatic, we've raised the sole. We've put a step in here, just a little 6-inch step. So we've raised the sole on the port side of this area, and we've been able to, because of that raise in height, we've been able to push the seating outboard further out, push the table further out. We've also pushed the galley counter a little further out in the middle of this galley here, and that's meant that we've been able to fit a bench in on the starboard side of the main table here. And that's a big improvement, because of course it means you can fit lots of people around the table without having a bench that slides out and gets in the way of this passageway. So in port, in harbour, this will be the general arrangement. There'll be a wood burning stove here, or a diesel heater or something. This step will probably come all the way around, or be, you know, do something elegant and nice there, and you'll be able to walk in here, be able to tend the fire, sit over there, sit here. There's a sort of nice open feeling to the saloon here, but you have got seating all the way around. And then we'll also have a leaf here that actually folds up to create 2 extra spaces at the table, and then another leaf on the bench which does the same thing. Now when you go to sea and you have to use the galley in rough weather, there's going to be a bench back that's going to slide out of this bench. It's going to be a sort of contained box bench, and most of it will be used for stowage of food or whatever else. But there'll be a bench back in it as well, which will slide up and lock into position, and that will be really useful as something to lean back on when you're in the galley, something to hold on to, and it'll make using the galley a lot safer in heavy weather, in big waves. Between the bench back, which will be about this high, and the mast, we'll also have maybe just a piece of line, piece of rope that clips on, or something rigid that slots into place here, so that you have that support all the way along the galley. So here's one more thing that we've changed. The companionway comes down here. This is the entrance to the galley. This is the chart table and the chart table seat. And right here, there used to be an electric panel. This was where we were going to have the switch panel. I've moved that now, and I've actually made the chart table seat smaller, and I've pushed the pilot berth a little bit further aft. And by doing that, I've made room for a wet locker, quite a big locker here at the bottom of the companionway. Now, because I've pushed the pilot berth a little further into the engine room, what we're going to do is actually box out at the foot end of that berth, that bed, so that you sort of put your feet into a little bit of a hole, and then above that is going to be either a shelf in the engine room, or actually a locker that's accessible from the pilot berth, so whoever's sleeping there or living there can store some of their things in that space above their feet. and the switch panel is probably going to go outboard in this navigation area. So a lot of people have been commenting on the benefits of a horseshoe-shaped galley rather than a line galley like this, and that certainly they do make a lot of sense, but they're actually just not practical in a boat like this. And the reason for that is that we don't have a raised deck house here to get extra headroom. So to get the headroom, we have to have our sole quite low in the boat. The floor has to be quite low. Because it's low, that means it's quite narrow. So all the walking area has to be pretty close to the center line. And so if you had a horse shape, and so if you did have a horse shaped shoe, and so if you did have a horseshoe shaped galley, it would have to come way out beyond the center line and take up a huge area of the boat, whereas this can be tucked out nicely against the outside of the boat, and the walkway is all pretty close to the center line. Now, horseshoe galleys are very much in fashion at the moment, but line galleys like this have been used for hundreds of years, and they work perfectly well as long as you do have something to brace against, so you can really work in the galley without getting thrown backwards across the boat in a big wave. So from this angle you can see the step a little bit more clearly. Of course it'll actually be faired in a little bit here, but you can see we've got the table that we've mocked up, the L-shaped settee that we've mocked up here, and it should be pretty easy to get in and out of here, pretty comfortable. We've been adjusting and working on the heights of the seats and the depth of the seats and so on, but I can pretty easily just get in here. This could be a nice place to take your boots off or whatever if you just come off watch. The wet locker's right there. You can even lie back here if you want. But also it's really pretty easy to get in here, and you can lean back, of course, on here. The seats are going to be a little bit more upright, but it's a really comfy space in here, and it's also, of course, a pretty good berth. You know, if you've had just one too many whiskies and can't quite make it back to the cabin, or if you're sailing and you've got a lot of crew, this would make a pretty good berth. There could be a lee cloth here to keep you from rolling out. But I think this saloon is going to be really nice. I'm really pleased with the layout. It feels spacious and open, but it's definitely secure and sort of tight enough to actually be practical at sea as well, which is often overlooked. There's obviously going to be a lot of storage in here as well, underneath all the seats, including the bench, and then one possible location for a fridge freezer is to potentially have drawers that pull out from under this bench here, just pull out right here. So up here in the forecastle, we haven't changed a great deal. The biggest thing I've done up here is add the chain locker finally. Now I wasn't sure exactly where the chain locker was going to be, but there turns out not to be enough room underneath the sole, so we're building up a box here, and this will be the spurling pipe, and rather than actually being a pipe, it's going to be a pretty substantially sized wooden box section tube, and one side of that will open up, so if there is any jams or anything in the chain, you can access it to get them out. So this box here will be the actual chain locker, and this half of it, the starboard half of it, will lift up so you can access the chain. You can flake it if you need to, but it should actually flake itself pretty well in there because of the shape of the boat down there. It is really important to keep the weight of the chain as low as possible for the stability of the boat. Now this is going to be a fold down, fold up step slash seat, so it could be useful for people staying in this cabin to just be able to sit down to put the socks on or whatever. People often neglect to put places to sit around a boat which aren't all in the same area. It could also be a kind of convenient place to sit when using this workbench possibly, but it'll probably be down most of the time while this bench is being used. The chain locker is the same height as the bench, so it makes this workbench sort of come into all the way around as a wraparound bench. Now this seat slash step will also be used to get up here, so this will be a hanging locker for hanging clothes and so on, and then behind here there's going to be shelving here, probably for paints and varnishes and things like that, and then there'll be more storage right up in front of the Samson posts up here. You really probably can't see anything from there, but lots of storage, sort of just open storage right in the very forepeak of the boat. That'll be useful for putting bicycles in and sails and things like that. I say bicycles because I did bring my bike frame down here and make sure it would fit in there, because it's quite important to me to have a bicycle with me, but it'll probably mostly be used for sales and just other miscellaneous items up there. There'll be various sort of lockers and things built into this area, but the important thing is we've got this chain locker. The other thing I did in here was just bring out the this bottom bunk a little bit at the foot end, the forward end, to have a little bit more room for feet there, and then we've got this ladder. Now, most of the time this ladder is probably going to live right here, so it's going to be on the side of the companionway hatch, so it'll be a way to get up and down into this area of the boat. But the other way you can arrange the ladder is going to be on little hooks, and it's kind of hard to do now because there's a big beam up here, but you will be able to take the ladder and arrange it something like this. So this is the engine room, and I just wanted to show you guys what it's like in here with the mocked up cockpit, because obviously it's a lot smaller. And this, as well as the diminishing sole boards and the diminishing headroom, is the reason why we can't have a big galley or a big cabin or a big head back aft here. But it is a very good engine room space because you don't necessarily need to stand up in an engine room. There's really good access to the engine, and although there's going to be tanks and a lot of system stuff here, there's going to be good access to pretty much all of that in here. And just being able to get to the engine so easily without having to remove the companionway or something, you know, we've just got a little door here. Being able to get to the engine so easily is a really, really nice luxury on a boat of this sort of size. Now, I forgot to mention it in the last video, but I am planning to have access panels to access the port side of the engine. All the regular maintenance stuff is going to happen on the starboard side, which is why we've got this sort of layout. But of course, we do want access to the port side. So to get to that, you'll have to move a mattress and pull up a panel and probably unbolt another panel, but you can get to the other side of the engine, you know, if something does need to be replaced over there.
They're both like hammers, so.
And they both, yeah,
They're both tuned up the same and everything.
they both have the same curses.
Hey, Rowan. What are you doing?
How you guys? Yeah, I have to go back to Santa Fe again, but been here about 3 months this time, and we've it's been an amazing journey. Honestly, the privilege of my life, and I should be back working on the boat again really soon. So we're rigged up with the motorcycle on the back, kayak on top, and we've got about 1,700 miles on the route that I've planned to get back to Santa Fe. Should take me hopefully no more than 4 days, but we'll see.
Don't hit any potholes.
You know, the suspension is maxed out for sure on the car, but that's all I'll say about that. Let's cross our fingers, YouTube. If you see me on the road, wave.
I reckon this will hold, huh?
Well, Patrick had to leave, which was a shame because he's a great help and a great guy to have around, but he will be back. For the next few weeks though, we've got some more help from Richard, who is an old friend of Pete's and a very experienced shipwright who has worked around here and on the East Coast and all over the place. He's a bit older than us, and so he won't be here full time, but he's going to be coming in and out to help us out a bit with the bulkheads and hopefully share a bit of his old-timer wisdom and tips and tricks.
My name is Richard Wilmore. I've been a shipwright for almost 50 years now. I actually helped build this building we're in now. With the Shipwrights Co-op, I was an original member there, and worked independently after that. I worked at the boat school teaching Northwest School of Wood and Boat Building for 10 years. And the last few years I've been working, repairing fishing vessels and pleasure vessels here in Port Townsend independently. I'm glad to be helping Leo on this project, and I'd like to say hi to all my friends that follow this program. I know the episodes, so there you go.
Hey Richard, quiet on the set. We're just pre-drill, or blah, blah. Okay. So we've got this lazarette bulkhead dry fitted into the boat. We built it down on the shop floor. This is 2 layers. You're looking at the forward face of this. There's a second layer behind it running the opposite direction diagonally. So we've got it dry fitted. We're happy with its fit, and we're pre-drilling all the fasteners that hold the 2 layers together. In addition to epoxy, we're going to be mechanically fastening this, and then we're pre-drilling all the larger screws that go into the frame here and the overhead deck beam there.
All right.
Okay.
Perfect.
Is that it?
Yeah. Now we are very soon going to be making the bulkheads, and I've been thinking a lot about how we're going to be attaching the 2 layers together. Now really I would have liked to do the traditional method of just bedding them together with paint, but after talking to a lot of people, including some surveyors, I've decided that it would be best in this case to glue the layers together. One of the weakest and most problematic parts of any boat is the joint between the deck and the hull of the boat, where the beam shelf or clamp is, and the hanging knees are what support that. But any extra strength in that area is always a good idea. And even though Tally-Ho is really overbuilt and she's really strong with those bronze knees, any extra strength in that area is always a good thing in the long term. Now the bulkheads, even though they're mostly just partial bulkheads in that they don't go the whole way across the boat, they sort of act like big hanging knees, and so they do add a lot of stiffness to that joint between the deck and the hull of the boat, and having them glued together just makes them a little stiffer and a little less prone to tiny movements, which could over many years loosen fastenings and lead to more movement in that part of the boat. So we're going to be gluing them with epoxy because it's gap filling and we can't get clamps around the planks of the bulkhead when we're putting it in. There may be very small gaps because of just small discrepancies in the machining of the tongue and groove. We're also going to be backing it up with mechanical fastenings with bronze screws so that if the glue does ever fail in several decades' time, the bulkheads will still be really strong and will still do their job. Warren, what are you doing?
I've decided that I don't like any of this and I want it out. Now!
We're doing complete redesign?
Yeah, I'm an advocate for making this just a big ball pit.
Nice. So now that I've got my cleat fastened to the bottom of that half beam, the deck beam there, it's time to make the pattern for the actual bulkhead. So I've already just wedged up a little prop there, which is exactly flush with the forward face of the frame and with the cleat. The cleat, of course, is in plane with the forward face of the frame, so the bulkhead eventually will sit up against the cleat and the frame. And so because Rowan has already cut out a pattern pretty much to the right shape using the laser scanning templates we got, I'm going to put that piece of plywood up there, clamp it into position, and then spile off the exact shape of the boat. And to do that I'm going to use a spiling block. So this end part will actually sit up flush against the frame and flush against the planks, and then I can draw around it in various different positions, and then later on I can transfer that from the plywood onto the tongue and groove stock for the bulkheads. Now to template the forward face of the bulkhead, which is the larger face in this case, I just turn this spiling block around and draw around it from the other side, and because of this angle and because of the thickness, it can actually mark down where the front of the bulkhead, the large face, is going to end up finally. So now I've taken my pattern out of the boat, It's upside down right now, but you can see it's got all these marks on from my spiling block, and because the spiling block was the same thickness as the bulkheads, I was able to get both the forward face and the aft face of the bulkhead, so all those marks are on here. So now I'm just getting all my pieces of tongue and groove laid up on the bench. I used the template to get the rough shape, but they're all a little bit oversized right now. And then I'm actually going to screw them together in this shape and then put the template back on and then really accurately mark out the forward face and the back face, the outline of the bulkhead. Now there are many different ways of doing this. Pete and Richard are using a slightly different method. They're transferring their marks and their lines onto that table, and then they're going to lay their tongue and groove boards down and then transfer the lines back from the table onto their pieces. Alright, so now I've got my 2 layers of tongue and groove screwed together. I'm actually just going to cut out the outside line with a jigsaw, so it'll make pretty much a square cut. It doesn't matter that it's not exactly square because the inside line is a good distance in, and I'm going to then use a special tool to transfer that inside line from this side to the other side, and then I'll just join those lines up. And then hopefully this will be the right shape to fit in the boat, and I'll take it apart and put it in one plank at a time.
Leo wanted me to demonstrate this device. I call it either a preacher or a cow. I call it a cow because it tells you what's happening on the other side. So if I got a line on something, I can squeeze it together and make the line on the other side of the whatever I'm building here. Preacher is good too because the preacher will tell you what's happening on the other side too. So.
Well, I'm pretty happy with this bulkhead so far. It seems to be going well. I think it's going to fit, but I spent so much time last week finalizing the interior layout because it really did have to be final before we pulled it all out again. And of course, I'm going to have to live with that for a long time. So I wanted to really make sure I was happy with it, and I wanted to consider every possibility. So I spent all of last week doing that. And then this week, I just started on Tuesday on this bulkhead. It's now Wednesday evening, and I have to edit this video tomorrow and Friday and tonight. So looks like I'm not going to manage to get this one in for this week's video, but it'll go in next week. But the guys, Richard and Pete, are doing really well on the lazarette bulkhead. So hopefully I'll be able to film and edit that as it happens throughout Thursday and Friday. And then if I edit late on Friday, it should be in this video out on Saturday. Part of the reason I'm explaining this timeline, apart from to explain why this bulkhead isn't going to be in the boat by this video, is just to show you that these videos are really, really up to date. Often you'll see what's happening on Friday, you'll see that on Saturday or Sunday if I don't get it finished by 5 in the morning on Friday night.
We're about to put the first bulkhead in the boat. That's the lazarette bulkhead here. It goes on the forward faces of these frames. Our first layer, like we all know, it's double diagonal. Our first layer is just going to be nailed in with some bronze ring shank nails just to hold all the individual pieces in place. We're really only going to get a few nails in. It locks together because of the tongue and groove. So we're going to get a couple nails just to hold it in place. And then when we put our second layer on, it gets a whole mess of screws in there all along the frame, and then smaller screws pinning the two layers together.
Pete, what is that you got there?
This is the keystone for the lazarette bulkhead. So it just goes right here. It's an integral piece here. It's very important. If it's not there, the whole thing will pretty much fall apart. So.
And that's it.
That's it. Really sucked getting it in there. I think a lot of the footage Leo got on camera is me just cursing a lot. So we'll just put some music over that. But if you read my lips well enough, you'll know what I'm saying.
Woohoo! Yeah, now I can go into the lazarette. It's really the lazarette. So you said this is where my bunk is gonna be? I'm actually completely stuck, so if you could bring me some dinner, that'd be nice.
Okay, well the first bulkhead is in and I'm really pleased. Pete and Richard have done a fantastic job with this lazarette bulkhead. It fits really nicely. And the glue has all gone off now, it's all set. They put this in this afternoon. It's Friday, it's now midnight. I've got a couple more hours of editing to do upstairs, but I'm nearly there and I think I'm gonna get the video done tonight. So I'm pleased with all that, and it's generally just feels really good to be putting new wood into the boat. It's been quite a while since we've done any constructive woodwork, so it's a really great feeling. That's all for now, of course, so thanks a lot for watching, and a massive, massive thank you to everyone who has donated or otherwise supported this project. It does make a huge difference, and it means that we're able to keep on doing this work, and I'm able to keep on making these videos. So I really, really appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time. Cheers.